Very hot today. How are you? So, we are here because a lot of you are writing to me asking, please, can you help me to be more creative? Other people say, I am stuck with the same idea. I'm doing it over and over. I sketch it from every perspective. But then the other day I looked all my sketches and I realized I was sketching all the time the same idea. I'm stuck. How can I do to get rid of this and just do something different and more creative? So this video, it's really to give you an idea about how you could try to be more creative. Now, there is one thing I have to tell you, to be very honest. It's not that we decide to be more creative and we become more creative, okay? It is a process. The first thing we have to assume and also accept is that not everybody can be creative. So if you are stuck on the same idea over and over, and maybe it's a couple of months, and you are trying to make a little change, and then for you the little change, it's a new design, when we both know that it is not a new design, it is not a new idea, it's just a different detail of the same thing, then probably in that case you don't have the real inner talent to be a creative person, especially on car design. Maybe you can be creative doing other things like product design or architecture, I don't know, even engineering, but not probably for cars. Now, let's suppose this is not your case, okay? And you are really going through a period during which you really don't know what you can do to be more creative. Well, in that case, what do? Well, in that case, I just ask you to follow a very simple process that I use for my online students when it's the moment to push them to be more creative. When I have my online course, I go through several steps with the student. The first step is, of course, to learn how to use the pencil on the paper, the markers, the sketching technique, perspective, the quality, the feeling, all that stuff. And of course, to do that, we start from the basic shapes and then we move on to some car shapes, okay? And we look at that car shape that the student decides to sketch. I don't sketch the car shape, he does, or she does it. And then we try to look at that design from every perspective so that it makes sense how to make a perspective of the same proposal, and then it's easier to make updates on design, on creativity, and then use the tools of perspective to sketch the new updated details in every perspective. But then there is another step I make with the students, which is how we can be creative, because we are supposed to be creative people. We will be paid for our creativity, okay, when we are designers. If I ask you to draw a building, okay, and I say, come on, let's make a very nice modern building, a lot of you will be thinking right away to the beautiful modern building we have, in La Défense in Paris, in New York, in London, in Dubai, in China, all those beautiful skyscrapers that are incredibly beautiful. When I was in China, I made a lot of pictures to those, to see shapes, details, reflections, materials, transparency. If you do that, it's not probably the best way for you to be creative or more creative, because you will get mentally, psychologically, okay, and culturally stuck into that type of approach. You have already somebody that made the project for you, which is the skyscraper that you are photographing or that you are searching on internet, and you will just be very much influenced by that. There is another way I try in general to force students to be more creative. It's by giving them a briefing and start with the thinking approach. So I'm not asking you right away to sketch, okay? But I ask you to think what really we should do and why and for who. So if I tell you that we have to make a building, a new building for a futuristic town, okay, that has to be without consuming electricity. It cannot be taller than 2 stores, that can have cars that you can park on your terrace, even in the second floor, that must have a new refreshing system that could be also provided by nature, that must have an innovative way to heat the apartments but without internal heating system. So if I start going more and more like that, okay, you will understand that you cannot take those references. We have to start thinking about materials. We have to start thinking of a new, completely different scenario, and you will force yourself to understand what would be the best natural conditions to make sure that you can install this building made of apartments into a context that that will not require real electricity, you know, but maybe just energy powers. And then nature in all this becomes very, very important, because if we are looking for some natural situation to cool off apartments, then we cannot do this into the desert. This is just an example to tell you that when you want to be more creative and stimulate your creativity, you have to go and look for those stimulus. Many times those stimulus come from briefing, from project brief, because in the brief there is a list of things that you should think of before you start sketching. And the mistake is that a lot of people just sketch. They start sketching, okay? If you do something upside down, okay, and you start thinking, then you can start reasoning about materials, about shapes, the best shape, I don't know, in the case of the building, to get the shadow at the right time, where you can plant a tree, for example, what type of plant can go over the building, how you can make the ramp or an elevator or whatever to get your car that is parked just next to you. In my experience, every time a student had to start thinking about a car that had to be in a completely different context, automatically he never sketched a car that looks like a concept car that we already saw a couple of months ago or 1 year ago, concept that we really like, we really love, you know. Because I give to the student, and you can give to yourself, a different context, a different scenario, in which you have to force your creativity to imagine what you have in that scenario. How are the buildings? How are the roads? How is the lights? How are the people? What they are wearing? And then in that context you understand that if you take a concept cover today, probably will not fit into that type of context. Therefore you have to start thinking what is the best mobile device, okay, in terms of transportation, for that context. And this is exactly what I am looking for. This is exactly what I'm looking for, because that it's forcing you to go off the mainstream, as we say sometimes, to think out of the box, which is a beautiful sentence, but if we don't explain it, it doesn't mean anything. To think out of the box is exactly to put yourself into conditions that whatever you will think of, it should be a different concept than what we already saw on the market. I understand that then you will go through the references, the search of images, the mood boards, all that stuff. That's great, but this has to come after that you thought with your head and start imagining that context, that new scenario, and how you should organize that scenario. So if, for example, we decided we must have the nature that is part of the building. If we come back to the building exercise, then you will go and look specifically for all the architects and images that will propose you different solutions about that. And you will discover that many of those pictures will show you the town of 2030, 2050. When I say, if you want to go and sketch and work on something that is really innovative, the first thing you have to do, it's really, you have to design the context. Even for a simple car or a simple object, you have to decide for who you do it, how you do it, how you can do it, okay, and in which context this project will stand. Okay, when you have the answer to all three questions, you will have already a given direction into which you must stay in order to accomplish your new creative idea for your project. You will go through the design process of making research, preparing the mood boards, doing the sketches, all that stuff. But the most important is that the way you start, you want to try not to start like a lot of people do. They look at the images, they love some cars, and then they take that as a reference all the time. I see this a lot around, and if you want to be a car designer, or you are young and you want to learn how to be a car designer, after that you learn how to use technique or a little bit your skills, and you have to think to produce alternative designs to what we see already, which means creativity. Well, I hope that I gave you a good answer. We had a nice talk about how you could be more creative if you are stuck into this creative block. I suggest you, once again, to go to the context, think really well what you see without sketching anything, and then start your design process. There might be a chance that you will be much more creative than what you do today. Thank you very much. Stick to the channel, like and subscribe. Bye. Ciao.